Good evening. Welcome in Daily UPSC editorial audio program. Respite in Doha, The Times of India. Butterfly effect rise. Pirates self-interest. The Economic Times. India's stationary course in the shipping value chain. The Hindu. Now the full editorial. Respite in Doha, The Times of India. Commuting of death sentence of ex-Navy man is a win. What case shows future challenges for India and West Asia. The Qatar's Court of Appeal has commuted the death sentence down to handed down to 8 Indian ex-Navy personnel is unqualified good news. The men were employed with a private defense firm working with the Qatari Navy. The charges against them were never made public, but there was speculation they were accused of spying for Israel. Close call. Close call. This made the case a real doozy given the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. New Delhi has developed very close ties with Tel Aviv while Doha hosts the Hamas political leadership. There were fears that the former Navy men had become pawns in a greater geopolitical tug of war, but the dropping of the death sentence eases those worries. What next? As of writing, the detailed order is still awaited, so it is unclear what jail terms the 8 men will be facing now. Technically, there is a possibility that the sentenced prisoners can be repatriated to India. PM Modi is meeting with Qatar's ruler on the sideline of the COP28 summit in Dubai seems to have helped, but nothing can be taken for granted given Qatar's black box judicial system. Strategic implications, but the biggest concern for New Delhi will be what this means for its relationship with Qatar and West Asia. Around the 8 lakh Indians live and work in Qatar, but it is clear that the New Delhi does not yet have the diplomatic heft to prevent such cases, even though its overall engagement with the region is increasing. Just like the Houthis targeting Indian crude ship, the trickier incidents may lie ahead. Broad-based engagement. Our best bet is to widen our engagement in West Asia. So to India, Israel, UAE, US is good, but don't ignore other regional powers. Qatar can punch above its weight. Others too can make life complicated for India. The Economic Times. Butterfly effect rise pirates self-interest. India's reluctance to join the US-led task force to pacify Yemen's Houthi threatening commercial shipping in the Red Sea is yet another assertion of its self-interest over international alignment. India's maritime trade is critically dependent on the Red Sea, and New Delhi does not wish to risk retaliation. In the process, the country's rise exports to West Asia are being affected. But that works in the direction of last year's export curbs on rice, wheat, and sugar imposed to keep domestic prices from climbing. The shortfall in these commodities is likely to be offset by growing export of other farms goods. Weak local prices of cereals aid in tackling transient transient inflation under this head. While India cannot be faulted for its skittishness to partnership, it does contribute to prolonging international conflict that affect its consumers. Buying oil helps Russia prosecute its war with Ukraine, Banning food export invites re- a retaliatory action from other nations that are inimical to an economy lacking in food security. Allowing pirates a free run in shipping lanes strengthens Israel's resolve to crack down on Gaza. Each of these has a direct effect on the common Indian trying to make up for loss of livelihood during the pandemic and facing a runaway inflation thereafter. A narrow definition of self interest serves to treat the symptoms rather than the mal- malaise. India, to be fair, has used its rising economic heft and global integration to champion multilateralism as a solution to conflict and inequity. Building Building consensus is arduous, and New Delhi has so far been able to convince the world about the need for it to strike out and its own if the situation demands. To that extent, it has conducted itself as a responsible global citizen. India's stationary course in the shipping value chain, The Hindu, boosting ship owning, chartering, financing, and building would not only push India to the center of the global maritime industry but also enhances its international trade presence. M. Kalinarman, uh, writer, is a maritime engineer turned journalist. The the Yangtze Yangtze River has been China's heartbeat through its long history, tradition, length, myth, culture, as well as commerce and industry are integral to the Yangtze lore. Today, the Yangtze is modern China's lifeline while uh, re- retaining its antiquity. The Three George projects has only added to its luster. As one enters the Yangtze from the sea, one can imagine hearing the sound of violins from Chinese opera or more recently from Kung Fu Panda. But one cannot close one's eye to the massive merchant ships, often two or three together, flitting in and out in the river. It is a unique sight. The modern engineering and shipping marvels of Suez or even the Panama Canal see a convoy of ships one behind the other. The Yangtze often sees multiple convoys steaming in parallel and in between smaller barks. Crisis cross the river much like the auto rickshaw on Indian roads. For a merchant shipment, it is an incredible sight, a story of expert seamanship, logistical planning, and piloting skills. The ship are either bringing in raw materials from across the world, including from far away Chinese owned mines from Peru and Africa, or leaving with the finished product to all over the world. Some vessels are new, built in, built in shipyards that stand cheek by jowl at every bend in the river. Many are repaired in those some yards and dry docks. The Yangtze is among the best examples of the tring, glitched looked where China is and where we are now. Stories such stories use statistics to show how India and China were on the same boat until the late 1980s and how China has leapfrogged since then, leaving India way behind. The India versus China story. India was actually ahead of China in the real boat until the end of the 1980s, while China was barely a speak in the global merchant shipping radar. India had the rudiments in place, while China was a late entrant. The starting gun has had gone off earlier for Indians. India boasted of a tradition of modern ship owning. In fact, the most spectacular case of ship owning the world has seen was a uniquely Indian contribution. A daring former Indian Navy officer commissioned and owned giant oil tankers that till today remain the biggest merchant ships ever built. India has been associated very closely with the International Maritime Organization too, with private players venturing in an area dominated by large public sector facilities. India has shipyards that were beginning to give hope that they may well build ships competitively for the global market. Labor at the labor arbitrage has preceded shipping at least 2 decades before it happened in IT. English knowing Indian seafarers were becoming a routine sight in global shipping as an industry took a step back from employing qualified Eastern Europeans whose English was not yet up to the mark. Safety is the number one priority in shipping, and knowledge of English is essential for that. Just as in other fields, India's main source of growth and foreign exchange earning has been the supply of labor in shipping. Two successive governments have focused largely on expanding the sea after population. In the past, Mumbai and Kolkata were the major centers of seafarers training and employment. The United Progressive Alliance UPA government decentered maritime training and opened it up to the private player. Today, institutions across the country churn out seafarers of various grades and competencies across the world, from the Arctic ice class merchant ship to the ore carrier calling on Chilean ports. If there are 20 seafarers on board a ship, it is likely 4 or 5 will be Indian. Along with the growth in seafaring populations, Indians with their talent for value engineering have grown into ship management. Indians with their can for bargaining know how to run a tight ship literally. They can take over a ship quickly, understand its system, and run it. Many ship management companies have sprouted in India, some in charge of hundreds of ships. Sanjay Prashar, shipping industry professional and former member of the National Shipping Board, estimates that Indian seafarers and their management companies bring in an estimated 6 billion in foreign exchange every year. According to Sanjay Baru's article in The Wire, India's total foreign remittances are some $125 billion, while China's stands at $50 billion. But ship owning, chartering, financing, and building remain largely out of bounds for Indians. India has simply not moved up the shipping value chain. With successive union governments letting the state-owned Shipping Corporation of India bleed, the order book of Indian shipyards has been hit. New private ship owners who are catering to India's own trade growth typically buy second-hand ships as they come cheap and can closely align with their short-term market forecasts that are often the only reliable prediction the Indian market allows, says Rishikesh Narasimhan, General Manager of Production and Refit at L&T Shipping, Kattupalli near Chennai. China stands at a stark contrast, powered by a dedicated government plan to ramp up shipbuilding and owning. China by 2020 was making half of all ships in the world. And just as in Japan and Korea, the previous leaders in shipbuilding, Chinese ship owners dutifully build most of their own ships at state-owned government yards, as Mr. Narasimhan points out. A negligible share in building. The UPA government came up with a Maritime Agenda 2020 that sought to increase India's share of global shipbuilding from less than 2% to a modest 5% in the decades, and proposed a vague roadmap that included stops to achieve it. By 2020, however, India's share in global shipbuilding had dropped to practically zero instead of inching up. The Bharatiya Janata Party government's Maritime India Vision 2030 outlined 10 key themes that includes logistics, environment concern, port infrastructure, and increase in seafarers growth and training. But just does not but just does not mention any plan for shipbuilding and owning. This is the talk of There is talk of Sagarmala, but the yards are seeing only naval ship orders. In India, with a long coastline and a strategic location as the geographic pivot of global shipping, shipbuilding would be an integral part of any serious attempt to amp up manufacturing capacity and deepen strategic power. Shipbuilding and oil would give India a seat at the table not only in the global maritime industry but also enhance its presence in the international trade scene too. Just as overall industrial might is integral to military might, shipbuilding is integral to a strong naval base as well. The movie Oppenheimer talked about how the Japanese cities to be destroyed with the atom bomb were selected. Uh, it did not quite point out that Nagasaki was chosen because the naval shipyard there was continuing to churn out naval boat and had to be destroyed. Only the bomb missed the shipyard and obliterated the civilian quarter. Nagasaki shipyard continues to thrive as an advanced merchant shipyard today. Thank you.